Hey guys, so I slept in a little bit today, and I'm having brunch. But you know what? It doesn't stop me from doing my job of internet journalism, letting you guys know what's going on in the world. And guess what? Excuse me, goodness, whoa. Whew. Sorry you had to hear that. But guess what, folks? Want to hear some China-U.S. trade war news? Well, we can't exactly mention that without mentioning tweets. And we cannot mention Twitter tweets without mentioning Donald Trump. So anyway, Trump plans on increasing tariffs on China to an even greater height, from 10 to 25%. Now, his tweets pretty clearly explain his reasoning why he thinks this is a good thing. And then I'll, of course, argue my side of it and why I think it's actually a bad thing. In the long run. It might be good for us now, but not in the future. See, the reason for the China pullback and attempted... this is his tweet, by the way. The reason for the... The reason for the China pullback and attempted renegotiation of the trade deal is the sincere hope that they will be able to negotiate with Joe Biden or one of the very weak Democrats, and thereby continue to rip off the United States $500 billion a year for years to come. Guess what? That's not going to happen. China has just informed us that they are now coming to the U.S. to make a deal. We'll see, but I am very happy with over $100 billion a year in tariffs filling U.S. coffers. Great for U.S., not good for China. And on Monday, Mr. DT there issued yet another threat to raise tariffs on Chinese imports. This is, of course, part of the seemingly endless trade war he started with China. The two biggest world economies, and he's not thinking about the effect this might have. In fact, let me tell you something about the effect this is ultimately having. Recently, back in 2017, exports from the EU to Asia was bigger than that to the United States. Now follow my logic here. I am using the references from an article with very real data that I reviewed earlier before starting to record this. So follow my logic here. And the EU's exports to Asia have been growing rapidly in the last decade. Faster than its exports to the US. You see where I'm going with this? If we inflict these tariffs on China, at least one thing becomes certain. China and a good portion of Asia will no longer see America as a valuable financial ally and will instead be sending more exports to the EU, who's becoming more and more important to them. And vice versa. Trump will literally be driving the Chinese away from us and instead making them a financial ally of the EU, creating an alliance that could potentially dwarf our financial GDP growth through fair and equal trade. Plus the fact that we said no to the revised TPP, which was the CTPPP. Ugh, God, they need to change that name. Even as an acronym, it's a mouthful. Blah. But, now see, according to this article I've referenced, Asia's market size for imports reflects its vibrant and growing consumer markets that are increasingly prosperous, measured by estimates of private consumer expenditure. Asia today is just about as big as the US. The big difference is, however, that private consumer expenditure in Asia is growing at twice the speed compared with the US. If Japan is excluded, Asia's growth is 3 times faster. Even more striking is China, where private consumer expenditure has been growing at an average of 13.8% a year in the last decade, over 4 times faster than in the US. And this is according to the World Bank, or WDI database, and Eurostat. Quite frankly, China is becoming more important to the world economy than the United States. And Trump seems to be only accelerating that transformation. You would think a career businessman would know better than to make a decision like this. He's seeing short-term benefits for sure, but long-term benefits? Gotta wonder. Of course, I always knew there had to be a reason why he joined the Democrats, why he joined the Republicans, right? Republicans have always been about short-term benefit solutions and short-term this and that, not ever considering the long-term. Of course, if you spend too much thinking about the long-term, you get a similar problem in the opposite direction. It's really all about moderation and balance, isn't it? And the Trump administration really doesn't have a good grasp on the idea of moderation or balance. Certainly not when it comes to our foreign policy of basically just harassment, of international harassment. So yes, we'll see short-term benefits of making a lot of profit off Chinese imports, but in the long run, they're eventually going to basically throw us to the wolves and go straight to their new trade partner, the EU, which could increase both their GDP growths, past our own. And Trump will make that happen. So I don't know. I think it's a bad thing. I think it's a bad idea, but make of it what you will.